Well, the Amazon sets the stage for the most crucial climate talks of the year. COP30 host Brazil aims to bridge rich and poor nations, yet questions remain over leadership, finance, and whether the world can still deliver on its promises to limit climate change.
Everything is set up to welcome around 50,000 participants for the most important global climate summit of the year, the COP30. Leaders will join negotiators, experts and activists over the next 2 weeks in Belém, the so-called gateway to the Amazon rainforest. One key topic of the summit, how to adapt to a warmer world and who is going to pay for it.
It's not just about managing risk, it's not just about cost. It's an investment opportunity, an investment in economic growth and stability. For every $1 invested in adaptation, it can generate more than $10 in economic benefits over 10 years. Many of those benefits come even if a crisis never hits.
As part of the historic Paris Climate Agreement 10 years ago, heads of states agreed to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, or preferably 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. To do that, nations must reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, but many are not doing enough. The US, the world's second biggest emitter, will leave the agreement, and many states have yet to submit new climate targets for 2035, an obligation under the Paris Accord. A warmer world means rising sea levels, melting glaciers, more frequent and severe extreme weather events. Per year, extreme heat alone kills around 500,000 people, and in 2024 it cost around 1% of the entire global GDP.
It's very clear that we need to go to zero greenhouse gas emissions. That's 100% clear, because only when we stop emitting CO2, then temperature will stop rising.
Host country Brazil is betting on money and the economy as a unifying element. Mobilizing private and public capital for green investments is likely to be central to the talks.
For that, Brazil is uniquely positioned to be a bridge builder because it understands the challenge many emerging economies face, which is advancing climate action while driving economic growth.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva wanted to bring the international community to the heart of the climate crisis, to the Amazon, the largest rainforest on Earth. Indispensable for the planet's climate and biodiversity, despite falling deforestation rates, the region is more endangered than ever by forest degradation, climate change and expanding agriculture. The coming 2 weeks will show whether this will prompt world leaders to build momentum and take the action needed to tackle climate change.
Let's bring in Natalie Unterstell. She's the president of Talanoa, which is a climate policy think tank. And she joins me now from Belém, Brazil, where COP30 kicks off on Monday. Welcome to DW. So observers say this is going to be a decisive decade in the battle against climate change. So what do you see as the key challenges for this year's COP30 summit?
Thank you, Mariana. I think, first of all, we are living in a more unstable and warmer climate already, but the politics is not catching up with this. So we have a reality gap here. And we just saw what is happening today in the Philippines with the super typhoon. Jamaica was hard hit by a hurricane recently. And even Brazil, 2 days ago, we have an unprecedented tornado in the south of the country. So the impacts are everywhere, but what we need to normalize are not the disasters, are precisely the adaptation, the resilience, the capacity to deal with this. So this COP has to deliver on 2 things: the transition away from fossil fuels and adaptation. This has to be the COP of adaptation. And the challenges are that the pledges, the targets to reduce emissions are still underwhelming. And on the other hand, the money is not flowing to adapt, especially the most vulnerable. So this is what we're expecting to be dealt with, and hopefully there will be success around these issues. But political trust is missing at the moment. So let's hope Brazil, as the president, and of course, all the other countries of the multilateral system will be able to cooperate and deliver.
Well, I want to ask you about adaptation because negotiators at this COP are set to finalize indicators for something called the Global Goal Adaptation. Could you maybe briefly explain to our viewers what that is and just how big a milestone it would be?
So for years or decades, we've been counting progress on the climate issue on tons of carbon, right? And now it's the time, it's the chance we have to really start measuring progress in terms of lives saved, in terms of resilience to the climate impact. So this indicators is actually a quite complex process that took 4 years for these negotiators to come to 100 indicators. They started with over 9,000 ones. And now it's time to really go into what is happening in the water sector, in the infrastructure, in the cities. So this will provide us a sort of dashboard for global resilience. And of course, will also help us to measure if the money is flowing to those that really need support. So this is what is at stake. We are hoping to see a groundbreaking result on that, but it's also very technical and very difficult, right? Very complex issue. So this is expected, and on top of that, Brazil, as the country leading this COP, is also talking about a broader package. So going beyond the more technical stuff and also working on the finance issue. So let's hope that both things will come together and be delivered.
This year also marks 10 years since the Paris Agreement, and the United States, the world's second largest emitter, is leaving this agreement. And meanwhile, other countries have not even submitted their targets yet. So does this tell us that the Paris Agreement is failing?
Well, if it weren't for the Paris Agreement, we would be heading towards a 4-degree warmer scenario. So we would be in a much more difficult situation than we already are. So in that sense, the Paris Agreement has already delivered, has already helped us. But the scenario we have now, which is a global warming of 2.6 degrees, is still very, very concerning. We gotta go to 1.5 and limit this to the extent possible in the immediate run. So the point on the Paris Agreement now is that we have 196 countries involved. Of course, 196 minus 1, which is the United States. It's not zero. We still have a lot of countries involved and engaged, and they will have to deliver with whatever they have. So let's hope that they can catch up with this new reality and that the US at some point re-engages in this global process too.
You also talked about financing, and COP29 had many ambitious financial goals, but they were unresolved. What lessons from Baku do you think negotiators should apply this time around to avoid repeating those same gaps?
Well, Baku was important because it did deliver an ambition in terms of how much we should mobilize climate finance in the next 10 years. So they agreed to mobilize at least $300 billion from developed nations to developing, and try to get to $1.3 trillion per year by 2035. So we are seeing these numbers out there, but what we need now is an implementation plan. So this is what Brazil, with Azerbaijan, COP29 presidency, they have been working around. They presented recently a roadmap or an implementation plan for that. And we are hoping that at the COP, all countries come together to decide on, what's coming next, what are the details. In terms of lessons, as you asked, I think one important one is, again, that we need this money to flow to countries that are not responsible for the emissions, but they have to adapt. So the Jamaicas, the Philippines, the others that are being hit at this very moment. In that sense, there is a proposal to at least triple the available resources to adaptation. We hope that gets through. And also many of the developed nations, including Germany, but also others, they are seeing their pledges on climate finance expiring this year or in the next year. So it's quite important too that these countries, they come up with new pledges, that they reinforce they are still in the game.
That was Natalie Unterstell, president of the climate policy think tank Talanoa. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.